The fall Emma first saw him through a camera lens. She was shooting the interior of an old theater slate for demolition, capturing the way afternoon light fell through holes in the ceiling like divine intervention. The place smelled of rot and old velvet, and she was alone except for the ghosts of 1,000 performances. Then footsteps echoed from the balcony, and she looked up to find a man in an expensive coat standing at the railing, watching her with frank curiosity. "You're trespassing," she called up, though she was doing the same. "So are you." His voice carried easily through the empty space, warm and amused. "I'm David. I own the building." She lowered her camera. "I have a permit." "I know. I'm the one who approved it." He descended the stairs with the easy grace of someone who'd never questioned whether he belonged somewhere. "I wanted to see what you saw in this place. Most people just see something that needs to be torn down." Emma felt heat rise to her face. "There's beauty in endings. In things that serve their purpose." "Is that what you tell yourself?" He stopped a respectful distance away, close enough that she could see his eyes were the color of brushed steel. "Or is it permission to walk away from things before they disappoint you?" The observation was too accurate, too intimate from a stranger. She should have left. Instead, she stayed for 3 more hours while he told her the theater's history, the performers who'd graced its stage, the last show before it closed. He spoke like he was reading her a bedtime story, and she let herself be lulled. When he asked for her number, she gave it without hesitation. Architected 4-act narrative structure for psychological drama script. "I need to continue building this story. I'm at around 600 words now, so I have about 6,400 more to work with. Let me structure the remaining acts. Continue Act 1 with their relationship developing. Mother's warning Act 2 should show the red flags emerging. Tension building Act 3. The revelation and danger Act 4. The escape and resolution with twist. Let me continue." Their first date was at a French restaurant where the waiters knew David by name. He ordered for both of them without asking, but somehow chose everything she would have wanted. The wine was perfect. The conversation flowed like they'd known each other for years. He asked questions that showed he'd been listening about her father, about why she photographed decay instead of celebrations. "You're looking for proof that beautiful things can end without being destroyed," he said, swirling wine in his glass. "That there's dignity in letting go." Emma set down her fork. "You've known me for 3 days. Some people you know in 3 minutes." His hand covered hers on the table, warm and solid. "Tell me I'm wrong." She couldn't. By the 3rd week, he'd integrated himself into her life with seamless precision. He appeared at her apartment with takeout when she was working late, left books on her nightstand he thought she'd enjoy, texted good morning before she'd opened her eyes. It felt like being seen after years of invisibility. It felt like relief. Sarah was less impressed. "He's too perfect," she said over lunch at their usual bistro, watching Emma scroll through messages from David. "Nobody's this attentive without wanting something. Maybe he just likes me. Men like him don't date women like us without a project in mind." Sarah speared a piece of lettuce with more force than necessary. "What does he do again?" "He's a consultant." "He restructures companies." "He fires people for a living." Sarah leaned forward. "Emma, I see guys like this in court. The ones who know exactly what to say, who've studied human behavior like it's a script. They're not connecting, they're performing." Emma felt her defenses rise. "You haven't even met him." "Bring him around then. Let me ask him some questions." But Emma didn't. Some part of her knew what Sarah would see, and she wasn't ready for it to be named. Her mother was more direct. Helen came to Portland for Emma's birthday, arriving with a homemade cake and the kind of scrutiny only mothers possess. David joined them for dinner at Emma's apartment, charming and deferential, complimenting Helen's cooking, asking about her teaching career with apparent genuine interest. Helen smiled and poured more wine and said all the right things. It was only after David left, kissing Emma's forehead with a promise to call in the morning, that Helen gripped her daughter's hand across the table. "He's not the man for you." Emma pulled away. "You just met him?" "I've met him 100 times in 100 different faces." Helen's voice carried the weight of experience. "I taught high school for 35 years. I know a performance when I see one." "He's nervous. Meeting you matters to him. Everything matters to him." "That's the problem." Helen stood, began clearing plates with sharp, precise movements. "He watches you, Emma. Not like someone who's falling in love, like someone who's studying for a test." "That's not fair. Your father was charming too." Knew exactly what I wanted to hear, became exactly who I needed him to be. Until one day I realized I didn't know who he actually was. That the man I'd married was a composite of my own desires carefully mirrored back. She turned, her eyes fierce. "I stayed too long. Don't make my mistake." Emma felt tears burn. "David is nothing like Dad." "Maybe not. But you're choosing him for the same reasons I chose your father. Because he makes you feel less alone. Because he fits into the spaces your grief carved out." Helen crossed to her daughter, cupped her face. "We teach people how to love us by showing them our wounds. Make sure you're not bleeding yourself dry." Emma wanted to argue, to defend, to explain. Instead, she kissed her mother goodnight and didn't mention David again for the rest of the visit. Alone that night, she scrolled through photos of them together. At the farmers' markets, at a gallery opening, at the Japanese garden where he'd kissed her under cherry blossoms. In every picture, he was looking at her while she looked at the camera. His expression was soft, attentive, perfect. "Too perfect," Sarah had said. Emma deleted the thought like an unwanted email. The unraveling the first crack appeared 2 months in, so hairline thin she almost missed it. They were at David's loft, all minimalist furniture and carefully curated art, cooking dinner together. Emma had reached for paprika from the spice rack when her hand knocked a jar to the floor. It shattered in a burst of red powder and glass, sharp and sudden. "I'm so sorry," she started, but David was already there, his hand closing around her wrist. "Don't move." His voice was flat, controlled. "You'll cut yourself." But his grip was too tight, his fingers pressing into bone. She looked down and saw his knuckles white, saw something flash across his face that wasn't concern. It was gone in a breath. He released her, already smiling, already apologetic. "Sorry, I reacted. My mother was always breaking things when she was upset. It's a trigger." "I wasn't upset. It was an accident." "Of course." He was already fetching the broom, already cleaning up the mess with efficient, almost mechanical movements. "I know that. Childhood stuff." "You understand." She did understand. Everyone had baggage, damage from the past that leaked into the present. She read enough psychology to know that trauma responses weren't rational. And he'd apologized. That was what mattered. But her wrist ached for hours afterward, and she found herself moving more carefully in his presence, hyper-aware of where she placed her hands. The second crack came a week later. Emma had plans to shoot an abandoned mill across town, a location she'd been scouting for months, finally accessible during a narrow window before demolition. David had seemed supportive when she'd mentioned it that morning, had kissed her goodbye with his usual warmth. At noon, her phone buzzed. Lunch? Can't shooting the mill? Told you this morning. Right. Forgot. Tomorrow then? But he texted again at 2, and at 4. And at 6, when she was packing up her equipment, he called. Where are you? Heading home. Why? Just wanted to hear your voice. Missed you today. It should have felt romantic. Instead, it felt like surveillance. When she got home, he was waiting outside her building with flowers and Thai food, all apologies for being clingy. I don't like when I can't reach you, he admitted over pad Thai in her apartment. It makes me anxious. After my ex disappeared for 3 days, turned out she was with someone else, I guess I developed trust issues. Emma softened. I'm not your ex. I know, and I'm working on it. Therapy, the whole thing. He took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. Just bear with me. She bore with him. What else could she do? Everyone deserved patience with their healing, but the texts multiplied. Gentle check-ins that didn't feel gentle. How's your day? Became, where are you? Became, why aren't you answering? And if she didn't respond within an hour, he'd call. If she didn't answer, he'd show up. Sarah noticed the change when they met for drinks 3 weeks later. You keep checking your phone, Sarah observed, watching Emma glance at the screen for the 5th time in 10 minutes. David wanted to know where I'd be. Does he need to know your location at all times now? He worries. It's not worry, Emma. That's control. Sarah's lawyer voice emerged, precise and cutting. Has he started questioning your time apart? Asking about who you talk to. Emma thought about yesterday when David had asked casually over coffee who liked her latest Instagram post. James Reynolds? Do I know him? A colleague. Married. 60 years old. Just curious. You never mention your work friends. He's interested in my life. There's interested and there's interrogating. Sarah leaned across the table. I'm watching you shrink. You used to tell me about your projects, your ideas. Now you just talk about David or worry about what David thinks. When's the last time you did something he didn't know about? Emma couldn't remember. He's isolating you, Sarah continued. Classic pattern. It starts with attention, morphs into monitoring, ends with you asking permission to breathe. She gripped Emma's hand. Get out now before you forget how. You don't understand him. I understand men who need to own things. Sarah's voice gentled. I understand women who confuse intensity with love. Emma pulled away. I should go. David's expecting me. Sarah didn't try to stop her, but her expression said everything her silence didn't. That night, Emma lay beside David in his bed, watching his chest rise and fall in sleep. The loft was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator, the occasional car passing below. She should have felt safe in his arms. Instead, she felt catalogued. She thought about her mother's warning, about Sarah's concern, about the way David's love felt less like warmth and more like being held underwater, pleasant until you needed air. Her phone was on the nightstand. Slowly, careful not to wake him, she reached for it. 23 texts, all from David, all sent while she'd been asleep beside him. You look beautiful when you sleep. I'm watching you breathe. I never want to lose this. I never want to lose you. The messages continued, escalating in their intensity, their possessiveness. Emma's skin prickled cold. She glanced at David. His eyes were closed, his breathing even, but something about the stillness felt wrong. Performed. She set the phone down carefully, exactly where she'd found it. In the morning, he made her breakfast and asked about her dreams. The revelation, the breaking point, came on a Tuesday in a way that felt both inevitable and shocking. Emma was at David's loft, waiting for him to return from a meeting. He'd given her a key 3 weeks earlier, a gesture that felt like trust, but had somehow become obligation. She was expected to be there most evenings now, expected to sleep in his bed, expected to merge her life into his until the boundaries blurred. She was making coffee when she knocked over a stack of mail on the counter. Papers scattered across the marble, bills, catalogs, a thick manila envelope with no return address. She shouldn't have opened it. Privacy, boundaries, trust, all the words David used when he was checking her phone, always with her permission, always with her complicit guilt if she hesitated. But something about the envelope felt wrong. Heavy. Urgent. Inside were photos. At first, Emma didn't understand what she was seeing. A woman with auburn hair at a coffee shop. The same woman entering an apartment building. The woman through a window, sitting at a kitchen table, unaware she was being photographed. Then Emma recognized the building. It was hers. The woman was her. There were dozens of photos taken over months. Emma at the theater where they'd met. Emma at the bistro where she had lunch with Sarah. Emma in her apartment, visible through her fourth-floor windows she'd never thought to cover because who would be watching from that height? Her hand shook as she spread the photos across the counter. They were organized chronologically, dated on the back in David's precise handwriting. The earliest was from 4 months before they'd met at the theater. He'd been watching her, studying her, following her. Their meeting wasn't chance. It was calculated. Emma's breath came shallow and fast. She thought about every conversation where he'd seemed to know her perfectly, every gift that had been exactly right, every moment of connection that had felt like fate. It had all been research. She was a project, and he'd done his homework. The apartment door opened. Emma spun to find David in the doorway, his expression unreadable as he took in the scene, the envelope, the photos, her tear-stained face. "You weren't supposed to see those yet." His voice was calm, almost gentle, like he was explaining a surprise party gone wrong. "Yet," the word came out strangled. He set down his briefcase, closed the door behind him with a soft click. The lock engaged. "I was going to tell you, when you were ready." "Tell me what? That you've been stalking me?" "That everything between us is a lie?" "Not a lie." He moved closer, and Emma instinctively backed against the counter. "Emma, everything I feel for you is real. I needed to know you first, to understand you. To make sure we were compatible before I introduced myself. That's not how relationships work, isn't it?" He spread his hands, reasonable, as if they were debating philosophy over wine. People curate their online presence, create personas, lie on first dates. I just skipped the pretense. I studied you, learned what you needed, became that person. And it worked. We're perfect together. You manipulated me. I loved you. He said it simply, like it explained everything. I saw you through your window one night, photographing your own reflection in the mirror. You looked so lonely, so hungry for connection. I recognize that hunger because I have it too. He took another step. We're the same, Emma. We both understand loss. We both see beauty in endings. I just made sure our beginning was perfect. Emma's mind reeled. Every intimate moment, every confession, every vulnerability had been staged. She'd given him her grief, her fears, her damaged heart, and he'd used them like a manual. "The theater," she whispered. "You didn't just own it. You knew I'd be there. I approved your permit, yes." I've been planning our meeting for weeks. Every detail. Pride crept into his voice. The lighting, the timing, what I'd wear, what I'd say. I knew you'd find it romantic, the idea of connecting in a place about to be destroyed. It played into your narrative. What about your ex? The one who cheated? Never existed. But you needed to believe I was wounded too. That we were both healing. He smiled, and it was the same smile that had made her feel special. Now it looked like a mask. Everything I told you was designed to make you feel safe enough to fall. Emma's phone was in her purse across the room. The door was behind David. The windows were sealed, industrial lofts, no easy escape. She was 4 stories up, and he was between her and safety. I need to leave. She tried to keep her voice steady. Why? Because I loved you enough to do the work? To ensure we didn't fail like everyone else? His tone sharpened. I've given you everything. I've been exactly what you needed. You've been controlling me. I've been protecting you. His facade cracked, showing something raw and desperate beneath. From making the wrong choices. From pushing me away like you push everyone away. I saw your patterns, Emma. Cancel dates, the unanswered calls, the way you sabotage anything good. I circumvented your self-destruction. I saved us. Emma's back was against the counter, David inches away, his presence suddenly suffocating. She'd mistaken his attention for love, his obsession for devotion. Her mother had been right. Sarah had been right. She'd ignored every red flag because she was so desperate to not be alone. Let me go, she said quietly. Go where? Back to your empty apartment? Back to photographing dead buildings because you're too afraid to capture anything alive? His hand came up to her face, a mockery of tenderness. I know you, Emma, better than you know yourself. You'll leave, spiral, regret it. Come back in 2 weeks apologizing, begging me to understand. I've seen this pattern. Then you know I need to leave. Something shifted in his eyes. The gentleness evaporated. I won't let you make that mistake. Emma saw it clearly then. Her future in his hands, shaped by his vision, controlled by his certainty that he knew best. She'd become one of his projects, restructured until she was unrecognizable. She grabbed the coffee pot from behind her and threw it. Hot coffee and glass exploded against David's chest. He stumbled back with a roar of pain and shock, and Emma ran. She grabbed her purse, wrenched open the door, and bolted for the stairs. His footsteps thundered behind her, too close, too fast, his voice echoing through the stairwell. Emma, stop. You're overreacting. She took the stairs 2 at a time, her heart hammering, her ankle twisting on the second landing. Pain shot up her leg, but she kept running, kept descending, his presence a weight above her, getting closer. 3rd floor? 2nd floor. His hand grazed her shoulder. She hit the ground floor and burst through the exit, into the Portland drizzle, into the street, into air that felt like freedom. People. Witnesses. Safety. A cab was stopped at the light. Emma yanked open the door and threw herself inside. Drive. Please. Just drive. The cabbie took one look at her face and hit the gas. Through the rear window, Emma saw David emerge from the building, still and watching, his silhouette sharp against the gray sky. He didn't chase her. He didn't need to. He'd already proven he could find her anywhere. The aftermath, Emma went to Sarah's. She showed up on the doorstep, soaking wet, shaking, barely coherent. Sarah took one look at her and pulled her inside, wrapped her in blankets, called in sick to work, and sat with her while Emma told the story in fractured pieces. When she finished, Sarah was silent for a long moment. "We're going to the police," she finally said. "And tell them what? He took photos? Lied about how we met? They'll say it's a relationship dispute. He stalked you, Emma. 4 months before you met. That's criminal." But Emma knew how these things went. She'd watched enough true crime, read enough articles about women who'd reported and been dismissed, who'd gotten restraining orders that were just paper, who'd been told they were overreacting until it was too late. Still, they went. Detective Margaret Morris listened to Emma's story with a worn patience that suggested she'd heard variations 1,000 times. She was in her 40s with gray threading through dark hair and eyes that were kind but unsurprised by human behavior. "Did he threaten you?" Morris asked. "He said he wouldn't let me leave." "Did he physically restrain you?" "No, but did he hurt you?" Emma thought about her wrist, about the grip that left no bruise. "Not exactly." Morris sighed, not unkind. "What you're describing is concerning." Stalking, harassment, definitely grounds for a restraining order. But to arrest him, I'd need more. A direct threat. Evidence of violence. Right now, it's he said, she said. And he'll say you're a scorned girlfriend making accusations. "I have the photos," Emma insisted. "Photos you found while in his apartment, where you admit you had a key and permission to be. His lawyer will say you invaded his privacy, that the photos are an art project or some other justification." Morris's expression was sympathetic. "I believe you. But belief doesn't hold up in court. Document everything. Save all texts, emails, voicemails. If he contacts you, don't respond, let it build a pattern, and file for that restraining order." They left with a case number and a sense of futility. For 3 days, David didn't contact her. Emma moved through her apartment like a ghost, jumping at sounds, checking the locks compulsively. She covered her windows with sheets, creating a cave of fabric and shadows. She stopped posting on social media, stopped going to her usual haunts, stopped trusting that anywhere was safe. Sarah stayed with her, a comforting presence who answered the door and vetted phone calls. Together, they filed the restraining order. Together, they waited. On the 4th day, flowers arrived. 3 dozen white lilies, funeral flowers with a card that read, "I'm sorry you're hurting. I only wanted to love you right." Then the emails began. Long, rambling messages about destiny and connection and how Emma didn't understand what they had, how he'd done everything for her, how she was throwing away perfection because of fear, how he'd wait because true love was patient. The messages arrived every few hours, their tone cycling from apologetic to angry to pleading. Emma forwarded each one to Detective Morris, watched the case file grow thicker, felt no safer. On the 7th day, Sarah had to return to work. Emma was alone in the apartment when her phone rang, unknown number. She should have answered. "Hello, Emma?" David's voice was soft, almost sad. "Did you get the flowers?" "Stop calling me. There's a restraining order, which I haven't violated. I'm 300 feet away, exactly as required." "I'm across the street, actually. I can see your windows. You covered them. That hurts." Emma's blood turned to ice. She went to the window, pulled back a corner of the sheet. Across the street, in a coffee shop window, David sat with a phone to his ear, watching her apartment. He waved. "This is stalking," her voice shaking. "This is public property. I'm allowed to drink coffee." His reasonableness was more terrifying than anger. "I'm not breaking any laws, Emma. I'm just nearby, in case you need me. I'm calling the police. They'll tell you what I already know. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just existing in the same city as you, the same neighborhood. It's not my fault we have similar routines. Emma hung up and called Morris immediately. The detective arrived within 20 minutes, but by then David was gone. The coffee shop staff confirmed he'd been there, but being in a public place wasn't a crime. Morris talked to Emma in the apartment's narrow hallway, her expression grim. He's testing boundaries, Morris said, seeing what he can get away with. This is escalation. Can't you arrest him? For sitting in a coffee shop? No, but I can increase patrols in the area and I can talk to him. Make it clear he's on our radar. But Emma knew talking wouldn't help. David wasn't someone who responded to warnings. He was someone who analyzed systems and found loopholes, who restructured environments to his advantage. He'd studied her for months before making his move. He was patient, strategic. He was playing a game she couldn't win. That night, Emma sat in her dark apartment and made a decision. She couldn't live like this, afraid, monitored, waiting for the next move. She'd spent too much of her life photographing endings. Maybe it was time to create her own. She called her mother. I need your help, Emma said, and heard the relief in Helen's voice that her daughter was finally asking. The trap-the plan took shape over 48 hours. Sarah provided the legal expertise, Helen the emotional scaffolding, and Emma provided the bait. She texted David from a new number he didn't know she had, asking to meet, to talk. She picked the abandoned mill she'd been photographing, the one he'd interrupted with his texts and calls. The place was scheduled for demolition in a week, already fenced off, isolated. Perfect. I understand now, she wrote. I overreacted. Can we talk? Just us. No pressure. His response came within seconds. I knew you'd come back. Tomorrow, 8 p.m.? Emma felt sick but kept her voice steady when she called Morris. I'm meeting him tomorrow at the old Riverside Mill. Will you be there? Emma, I can't sanction you putting yourself at risk. I'm going either way. I need to end this, and I need him to show who he really is. A long pause. Then I'll be there. But at the first sign of danger, we're intervening. Sarah wanted to argue, to list all the ways this could go wrong. But she'd seen too many women backed into corners to suggest any alternative that didn't involve Emma taking control of her own narrative. Helen just held her daughter's face and said, Be smart. Be safe. Come back to me. Emma promised she would. The mill looked more beautiful in decay than it ever had in life. Emma arrived early, as she knew David would expect. She'd worn what he liked, soft sweater, dark jeans, her hair down the way he preferred. She hated herself for the calculation, but she understood now. To beat someone at their own game, you had to learn the rules. She'd hidden her phone and her jacket pocket recording. Detective Morris was outside with 2 officers monitoring via a wire Emma wore beneath her sweater. She felt its presence like a talisman. David arrived exactly on time, carrying coffee in expensive to-go cups. He looked thinner, tired, but his smile was the same one that had fooled her 3 months ago. You came, he said, offering her a cup. Emma didn't take it. We need to talk. We're talking now. He set both cups on a dusty windowsill, moved closer. I'm glad you reached out. I've been going crazy without you. You've been following me. I've been loving you. There's a difference. No, there isn't. Not the way you love. Emma kept her voice steady, channeling every therapy session, every conversation with her mother. You don't love me, David. You love the idea of controlling me. That's not true. You studied me like a subject, manipulated me, isolated me from everyone who cared about me. She watched his face, saw the mask slip slightly. That's not love. That's obsession. You don't understand. His voice rose, frustration bleeding through. I did everything right. I became exactly what you needed. I erased every obstacle, every reason we might fail. I made us perfect. You made a prison. I made a future. He grabbed her arms, and Emma felt Morris's voice crackle through the earpiece. We're coming in. But Emma shook her head slightly, staying the intervention. She needed him to confess. Needed him to reveal what the restraining order and police reports couldn't prove. Let me go, she said quietly. I can't. Don't you see? If I let you go, I lose everything I've built. All that planning, all that work. I'm not a project, David. I'm a person. You're my person. I chose you. I studied every detail, anticipated every need. I know you better than anyone ever will. His grip tightened, shaking her slightly. You belong with me. I've proven that. You've proven you're sick. Something broke behind his eyes. The performance shattered, revealing the desperate, damaged thing beneath. Don't say that. Don't. I'm not like him. I'm not like my father. I controlled everything so I wouldn't become him. The confession spilled out childhood trauma, a mother he'd failed to protect from an abusive father, the belief that if he'd just been smarter, more vigilant, more controlling, he could have saved her. He'd spent his adult life restructuring that failure, applying it to every relationship, every interaction. Emma was supposed to be his success story. I understand, Emma said softly, even though she didn't, even though his pain didn't excuse his actions. But you can't save me from myself. That's not how this works. Then I'll teach you. No, it's over. David's hands moved to her throat, not squeezing, just resting there, a threat and a promise. I decide when it's over. Now, Emma whispered, and the doors burst open. Detective Morris and 2 officers flooded in, guns drawn, shouting commands. David released Emma immediately, hands up, that same reasonable mask slamming back into place. Officers, I don't know what she told you, but we were just talking. We heard everything, Morris said, already cuffing him. Death threats, assault, stalking, gave us quite a recording. David's eyes found Emma's, and for a moment she saw genuine surprise. You set me up. I learned from the best. Resolution of the trial took 8 months. David's lawyer painted Emma as vindictive, unstable, a woman scorned who fabricated evidence. But the recording was damning, and when Detective Morris testified about the photos, the pattern of surveillance, the escalating behavior, the jury saw what Emma had seen too late, a dangerous man who'd confused control with love. He was sentenced to 3 years for stalking, harassment, and assault. It wasn't enough, it never was, but it was something. A boundary enforced by law, not just by Emma's fear. Sarah threw a small party the day the verdict came through. Helen flew in from Boston. They drank wine on Emma's apartment balcony, finally uncovered, and watched the sun set over the Willamette River. How do you feel? Helen asked, her arm around her daughter. Emma considered the question. She'd spent months in therapy unpacking the damage, learning to trust her instincts again. She'd left the architectural photography behind, too much decay, too much ending. Now she photographed people, strangers on streets, couples in parks, children playing, life in motion, beginnings instead of endings. Lighter, she finally answered. That night, Alone in her apartment, Emma received an email from an unknown address. No subject line. Just a message, "You were right. I was trying to control you. But I learned something during these months, how to let go, how to accept endings. You taught me that in your way. I wanted you to know I don't blame you. I hope you find what you're looking for. I hope someone loves you better than I did. P.S. I've been working on myself. Therapy, like you suggested. Turns out I can change. Maybe when I get out, we could talk. No pressure. Just a conversation between two people who once meant something to each other. I'll be seeing you, Emma." The Emma stared at the screen, her hand shaking. The message was careful, apologetic, reasonable, all the hallmarks of his manipulation. But the last line, "I'll be seeing you." Not, "I hope to see you." Not, "Maybe we'll cross paths." "I'll be seeing you." A promise. A threat. The same obsession wrapped in therapy speak. Emma forwarded the message to Detective Morris, blocked the sender, added another lock to her door. She understood now that some people couldn't be fixed, only managed. That safety was something you built daily, vigilantly, aware that monsters didn't always look like monsters. But she also understood something else. She'd survived. She'd recognized the danger, escaped the trap, rebuilt her life. She listened to the warnings, too late, but soon enough. And if David came back in 3 years or 30, she'd be ready. Because Emma Thorne had learned to photograph endings. Now she was learning to create them. She deleted the email, turned off her phone, and went to sleep with every light in the apartment blazing, not from fear, but from defiance. Tomorrow, she had a photo shoot scheduled, a family reunion in the park. Generations gathered, connected, celebrating beginnings. She'd capture their joy, their messy love, their imperfect but real bonds. She'd spent enough time documenting things that were already dead. It was time to photograph life.